you everyone for joining. Thank you for taking the time. I know everyone's time is precious, so thank you so much for joining. I'll go ahead and start from the top by sharing my screen. And it's always difficult when there's more than one screen. You warned me about this too, Chelsea, didn't you? Let's see here.
We can see it. Can you make it a little bigger?
Can you see it? Oh, okay, good. Good. Okay, how about this? Oh, that's too big.
Try 200.
200? Does that look better?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So this is an invitation to bid, or an ITB for short. An ITB is generally used in situations where we know the exact commodity or services that we're looking to obtain. We're not looking for a proposal where there's different ways that the product or service can be met. We're looking for very specific. In the example of services, it'll be a specific brand or a specific item number. In the event of services, it'll be very defined. Like, we need you to do exactly this service, this kind of timeline, this kind of performance requirement. So the ITB is going to start off with the introductory letter, and this is a great place just for you to get a feel for what the ITB is about. So at the top here, you can see the title. The example that we're going to be using today is the audiovisual equipment installation, products, and computer peripherals. This is what we consider a catalog ITB. The interesting thing about this ITB is it does include products and services. So we'll kind of get a little bit into that in a second. As you can see, here's the introductory letter. Now, the first thing I would recommend, as soon as an ITB becomes available on the streets, I recommend taking the time to print it out if that's what you would want to do, and read it. Read the whole document from start to finish. Sometimes with a long time on the street.
It sucks that, I would think it would be modular that,
Someone's muted there.
I'm sorry. I'm going to mute the participants.
Okay. When a bid has a long time on the street, sometimes the tendency is to delay it, to think there's plenty of time later to think about it. But I recommend diving in sooner. In fact, the best thing is right at the very beginning. So one of the first things you're going to see is the table of contents, which just gives you a lay for how the bid is going to be laid out, or a bit of a brief introduction of the sections. I'm just going to scroll down. The very first thing you're going to be seeing, this is a very important document. We call this the bidder acknowledgement form. This document right here is where you're going to be filling out key information about your company, such as the company's name, your employee identification number, or your tax identification number. This document right here, and as it says right here, in accordance with General Condition 1, this section must be completed in its entirety, and it must be signed by an authorized representative. And sorry to everyone in the group, I'm looking off this way just because that's where my screen is. If this document is received without a signature, then it's not considered executed. So please take the time to complete all of these boxes and then make sure that an authorized representative from your firm signs it. Also, I want you to see where it says right here that it says you're submitting the bid information, and that the person signing it is authorized to bind your company. So in an ITB, this document becomes the contract between our firms. We don't, for example, I know a lot of people attended the RFP session. In an RFP, you've got the bid document, which results in a contract, an actual written contract. In the case of an ITB, we don't write an actual formal contract. The contract really literally is this document that we're talking about. So as part of that, pay special attention to this little phrase right here, which says the bidder agrees to complete an unconditional acceptance of the contents of all of the document. all of the appendices, this kind of thing. Right here, as it says, failure to accept the requirements will result in a disqualification of the bid submitted. So what does that mean? Let's just, well, let's move on a little bit, because I want to kind of get into some of the more meat, and then I'll help explain some of the pitfalls I've seen some vendors fall into, and so just to help you avoid those pitfalls. It's one of those things, as a purchasing agent, we're always looking to have the most responsible bidders. We're not looking to kick anyone out. It breaks my heart when someone doesn't fill something out. Like it breaks my heart when someone returns this and it's not signed, because I have no other choice but to reject. In the section right down here, right below the required response form, in the same page, we're trying to help you by showing you what you have to submit with your bid. So for example, right here, I'm telling you the bidder acknowledgement, it's required. You gotta make sure you return that. The conflict of interest form, it's required. That's why it's checked here. And I'm helping you identify where else in the document you can find information about that. The certificate of debarment, it's required. Okay. Okay. Now, the next section is going to be your calendar. So the calendar, these are super important dates.
Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Am I the only one that's having trouble accessing the link? I was unable to get onto the Teams. So I'm here only by audio.
Oh. Do you have the Teams client downloaded to your computer or to your phone?
Yes, I do. Mm-hmm.
Chelsea, do you have advice in this situation?
We'll take care of it on our end. I'm sorry, I thought I was unmuted. We'll take care of it on our end. I'll call her right now. You can go ahead, Harmony. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so in this calendar, we have of course the date that we're releasing it. The next thing that's going to be listed in the calendar is the date that the bidder questions are due. So this is a very important date. In some solicitations, you won't get a response if you submit your question later. So, and that's one of those things I hate. There's a couple bids I was put in a situation where I had to respond saying there's a type of bid called E-rate. And in an E-rate bid, there's a quiet period, and I couldn't respond. And I literally had to respond to, a question saying, I'm sorry, the question and answer period is closed. So that's why I'm trying to say, the sooner you can get the bid document, start reading it, get your questions compiled, like literally print out the document and make any note of any questions, and then send them right away to the purchasing agent. So I'm going to get into that in a second as we dive into the meat of the bid, where I explain to you how you ask questions, what's the process for that. So that's coming. Here it's got the email address, but there's a section that will give you more information in a moment. The next important information is the bid due date. So bids do need to be delivered in a hard copy form, along with a flash drive, to our offices here on Oakland Park Boulevard. You can either send it with one of the carriers like FedEx or UPS, or you can hand deliver the bid, but it must be before the due date and the due time. Now, in my bid, I try to help everyone understand, if you plan on arriving with your bid in person, as this says right here, note if you plan, so that's a public meeting. The bid opening happens in public, and what that means is people can come and witness. Now, typically on anything that's not construction related, we open the bids, we announce who the bid's from, and that's pretty much it during the bid opening. And anyone from the public is welcome to attend those meetings. If you plan to either drop your bid off in person or you want to attend that public meeting, please, it's really important, note that the building we're in is, we call it the TSSC, right? Up here it says what that stands for. It's Technical Support and Services Building, TSSC, on Oakland Park Boulevard. If you plan to attend that meeting, please arrive early enough to find a parking spot. Sometimes the spots are really limited. You're going to have to get from your parking spot all the way into the building, you got to go through security, have your ID, because it'd be heartbreaking if you got here and you didn't have your ID. And then you've got to go from there to the 3rd floor. So it's not getting the bid inside the door of the building by 2 o'clock. You've got to get it to procurement by 2 o'clock. All bids are time stamped. So when you drop your bid off in person, you'll get a receipt. I wish I had one right here. I should have had one. I'll bring one next time where I show you. Here's a picture of what the times, or here's the actual timestamp. And as I said, they then hand you, the person delivering the bid, a receipt for your records that shows, hey, I was there in time. Okay. I have had situations where the bid arrived later. I actually have one that recently, it arrived a day late. And when that happens, we don't even open the bid. It just sits in the file permanently unopened. And they get rejected because we have no other choice. Okay. Section 4, or the next section of the ITB, is going to be the small print, if you will. And the small print, this is what we call the boilerplate of the bid. Okay. The boilerplate of the bid says right here what I just basically told you a second ago, that the bidder acknowledgement section, it must be signed and returned with the bid. And that it's the bidder's responsibility to get it to the procurement and warehousing department in a hard copy. And when I say hard copy, sometimes there's confusion on that. Really, usually in the bid, it'll tell you if it was more than one copy. I know there are some bids where they'll tell you bring 1 original and 8 copies. That's very unusual these days. Typically, it's just a hard copy, one printed out, that's the original, and then the electronic copy. Just for clarity, the hard copy, the original hard copy, is the one, if there's a discrepancy, it's the copy that governs, it's the copy that rules. Okay. So, in some of the small print, I'm not going to go into all of them. Let's see. I did want to touch on a couple things. Because this is boilerplate, sometimes not everything applies to every single bid. So there's a general condition within here in a moment that we're going to talk about in the next page that talks to this. But for example, samples is a great example. It doesn't apply to everything. Like, how can you provide a sample of a tree trimming service? This is, like I said, boilerplate. I've bid out, my specialty is technology. So I've had ITBs for our firewall or for our servers. You can't give me a sample of a server, like that's it, but this is just there for everything. You can always ask a question if you have concerns about, like, what do you mean by sample? But what I would answer is that that's just part of the boilerplate. Right here, it says interpretations. So any questions concerning the conditions or specifications must be submitted in writing. Okay, it must be received no later than 10 working days, or is the date that's specified in the bid. And if needed, an addendum will be answered. It will be how we address questions. So I have had situations where vendors will call me and they want to talk about their questions on the phone. But there's a couple reasons why that's not the method of how we would convey information. Number one, it's not binding. Anything that's said verbally is not binding on the school district. And then number two, it's not fair for everybody. Everybody should have the same information. So that's why we ask all questions to be sent via email, or officially asked, formally asked, and then they're formally answered with an addendum. So everybody has the same information. There's nobody who's working with different information than anyone else. Sometimes there's a situation where we might have to withdraw a bid before the due date. Sometimes there's something where we notice something about a bid and we have to withdraw it. And then, but if that happens, we communicate what we're doing next. We don't typically take action where this is talking about where we can withdraw the ITB prior to the bid opening date. We wouldn't typically withdraw it without explaining why. Here it talks about the bid opening. As I mentioned, bid openings happen in public. Okay, I'm going to scroll down just a little bit, and I wanted to talk about the special conditions. And right here is where, as I mentioned, this is the general conditions are kind of the boilerplate. It's what's included with everything, if you will. But the bid then has another section called special conditions, and it says that the special conditions may vary from the general conditions. Okay, so that might sound a little confusing, but it'll make more sense as we go. Substitutions are not usually allowed. Sometimes there's bids where they'll say this or equivalent, but generally it'll express that no substitutions are allowed. It's kind of exactly what they're asking for. And then assignment. Sometimes a company is acquired or name change, that kind of thing happens. The director of procurement can handle those kinds of changes through a process we have without, because as I mentioned, this is not a contract that results. This is the contract. So we can handle that. If that happens to your firm, contact the purchasing agent and we'll be happy to walk you through that process. Now, this is kind of interesting. This clause right here says that this bid and the purchase order makes the complete agreement. And that Broward Schools is not able to accept any other additional terms or conditions. This is it. I have had situations where after a bid, then an awardee will then present a document, say to the department, or right here it says, by virtue of signing the bid, the awardee agrees not to submit to any employee for signature any document that contains any terms and conditions. But I had one, and it was probably about a year ago, and it was after award, and then the vendor submitted some sort of a scope of work document, very detailed, and they wanted the department to sign it. But I pointed them over here to this clause, which says, no, we don't sign any other document. This is our full, complete document. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and scroll down just a touch. This is an interesting little blurb right here. It's been updated since this bid was released, where it says right here, indemnification, this general condition of a bid is not subject to negotiation. This is a funny way to word it. This is actually cut and paste from the RFP document, which includes the ability to negotiate. In ITB, nothing is negotiated. Nothing is subject to negotiation. As far as you as a bidder, you as a vendor, if you disagree with something within this document, the way to handle it is by writing to the purchasing agent your specific question. Like, for example, let's say this clause right here, which says basically that other public entities can use our contract to piggyback on. So you can get more business than just with the school board, because other entities will then piggyback and use the same contract. But let's say you, for some reason, don't like that clause. You can't submit your bid and cross this area out and say, I object to that. I actually had a vendor one time who submitted their bid, but they took exception to it, especially a lot of the fine print in here. They took exception. They said, instead of it saying it like that, it's going to say it like this. Instead of it saying like, and I had to reject them. I had no other choice because they actually didn't accept the bid the way it was written. They had proposed a whole another set of terms and conditions, if you will. Let's just say you disagreed with this. The way to handle it then is to write a question and say, whatever you want, whatever, maybe you say, hey, I think that instead of just saying other agencies, I wanted to say other schools and governmental. So then write and say, can we further clarify agencies to say this? And then the purchasing agent can get that. And now we can answer and address that via an addendum. Okay, I'm going to go just a little bit further to the rest of this kind of fine print boilerplate area, and then I'll stop to take any questions. I know you're probably all tired of the fine print by now. Interestingly, in this section is this whole section right here, which talks about tie bid procedure, because sometimes there'll be a situation where two bidders have the same exact bid, and this right here defines how is a tie bid broken. What do we do with tie bids? This section for disputes talks about if there's any conflict within the documents. This shows what has precedent, and that's where I'm expressing that the addenda has the precedent if there's a conflict or a change over the ITB. So let's say that example of the piggybacking clause. Let's say I answer that and say, okay, I'm willing to say, these kind of entities are the types. It would take precedence over what was contained in the original ITB. Okay. All right. Now, interestingly, sometimes we have material numbers, or sometimes a bid will talk about that we intend to create material numbers as a result of the bid. Material numbers are something that it's a 7-digit number, and it's created within SAP, which is our system that the school board uses to generate purchase orders. And it eliminates the need of the school having to go get a specific quote for every single purchase. With a material number, they're able to kind of enter that number into the system and then generate a purchase order without getting any other documents, because let's just say a normal, without having a material number associated, the school or department needs to contact the awarded vendor and ask for a quote for exactly what they're looking for that specific purchase. And then that quote gets attached to the requisition, which becomes a PO. But the neat thing about the material number is it saves you time, saves the school, everyone gets saved time to create the material number. Now the material number, the price is like locked and loaded. If something changes, we have to manually update it. It's a very manual process. Number 56 says what I've kind of already expressed, and it's mirroring special or general condition 34, which says basically only the terms and conditions in the solicitation are valid, and that only modifications that we write, that are put in writing, are binding. Now the cone of silence. I want to talk about the cone of silence for just a second. The cone of silence prohibits bidders or lobbyists for bidders from having any communication concerning the competitive solicitation with any school board member, with any evaluation committee member, with any district employee, with anyone besides the purchasing agent or the procurement and warehousing services department about the solicitation. So, and we actually had a situation recently where one of the awardees sent an email to somebody within the district that was not in procurement and warehousing services, and it was deemed a violation of the cone of silence. And so in here it talks about that they will then not be subject for award, that takes away the award. So be very careful. If you have an ongoing relationship with the department and you're not communicating about the solicitation, that kind of communication is fine. That's not within the cone of silence. But like, for example, let's say you've got a bid in place with the PPO department, and you know that there's a PPO bid on the streets. You can't reach out to the PPO department to say, hey, can we extend the due date? You can't ask them. Got to go through the purchasing agent or the purchasing department, okay? So that's really, really important. And the last thing, this is a little confusing. This has to do, so within the document here, it talks about that we're, the school board is subject to the sunshine laws and the public records laws, right? So any bid that's submitted becomes public document. The statutes specify when it can be released, under what situations it can be released, that kind of thing. But there's a small clause within the statute that talks about proprietary information. Now, you as a business holder, sometimes bids will be marked, the entire bid will say confidential at the bottom, but that's considered a public document. The whole thing can't be confidential. Like, for example, your company name, the first section where you fill out who you are, there's nothing that would be exempt from the public record. But your proposal may have trade secret information. Maybe there's something that you do, something about your business that's unique, that's considered exempt from the public record. When that happens, there's a section within the bid right here that tells you how to handle that. If you have a section of your bid that you believe is confidential and exempt from public records, then you would mark that section exempt. As it says right here, you'd be able to express why it's exempt. So I'm going to go ahead and take a pause and ask if anyone has any questions. That was a lot of information I just threw at you.
So I've unmuted the mic, so if you have questions, please go ahead and raise your hand. You've raised your hand, that is. And we'll take your questions at this time. Okay, we have Cindy, I believe. I saw a hand up, but then it went down. Do we have questions? No? Okay, how many? I guess there are no questions at this time, so you could go ahead. Okay, move forward.
No problem, no problem. Okay, so we've kind of talked about this fine print, the small print. Let's get to the next section, which is really an interesting section, and that's the special conditions. And that's where it's going to be different for every bid, right? This is going to be custom depending on the type of purchase it is. So this example we're using right here, we are telling you that we're looking for bids on audio-visual equipment. It's basically the title again. And I'm telling you right here that the bid contains two groups. It contains a group for installation services. And then the second group number 2, is products. The next thing I tell you is that the prices quoted, that they're going to be, it must be for inside delivery. So for example, a 50-inch television, it needs to be brought inside to our building, not just to the loading dock or to a warehouse. It would be delivered to a school inside. And I'm telling you here that various departments and schools and centers will be buying the equipment, that you'll be receiving multiple purchase orders with different ship to addresses, different ship to. So in other words, what I'm saying to you here, helping you understand, it's not going to be one PO coming from like a bulk from the district level. It's going to be all individual. Okay. Normal business hours will vary. I'm just communicating that from the very get-go here, that it's the awardee's responsibility to kind of confirm before they try to deliver. If the school's open, if it's on holiday, if it's like, say, for example, right now we're in our summer hours where we're closed on Fridays, so we can't accept any deliveries because we're not open on Fridays. So that's just right there. Now, in this situation for audiovisual, we're defining installation and assembly. So this kind of breaks into what the scope of work is for this particular bid. So in this bid where we're talking about the service, which is the group 1, installation and or service, we're saying installation we're defining as something that is being mounted on the wall, on the ceiling. So this is where I was mentioning that an ITB is where we know specifically kind of what we're looking for. That the how do we express here? At some point in this particular situation with AV products, there was a small window where just anybody was installing TVs and they weren't using the right kind of anchors, and sometimes it's something would fall off the wall, or sometimes people were putting cabling above the ceiling that was not in conduit, that kind of thing. So here I'm expressing that installation means you're drilling into my wall, and then assembly means maybe you're just taking and putting a TV on a cart, maybe just, or putting together maybe a podium or that kind of thing. So this is here because it's got a reason within the bid. You'll see why in just a moment. Here, as I was mentioning, we're asking for one hard copy signed, one signed hard copy, and then one digital version, like in a PDF format, and then the bid summary sheet should be in Excel format. This will be just a document you're returning to us, and on a flash drive is preferred. So as I mentioned earlier, if there's a discrepancy between the hard copy and the electronic copy, the hard copy governs. Okay. This section right here is talking about if there's any questions, like we mentioned before, you should print maybe, I mean, an idea would be to print out the bid and then make note of all of your questions, and then take those questions, and then right here it's saying, this is the person you talk to. In this section right here, it's saying that we typically would then point you back to the bid. So don't take offense if we say, if you ask a question like, what do you mean by installation? I might point you back to exactly where it says in the bid what you're looking for. And right here we say that any information that is spoken is not binding. So that's why we want you to email the question, and then we will publish an answer for everybody to have the same information via an addendum. The addendums are all published on DemandStar. And the addendum is basically a question and answer sheet. Sometimes the documents might need to be updated, that kind of thing. Part of a bid package that you receive, you'll receive the PDF of the actual bid and then the Excel price sheet. I always highly encourage everyone to open up that Excel spreadsheet and play around with it. Look at all of the information contained, all of the specifications, and ask the purchasing agent right away if something looks funny, if a formula is not working correctly, if something is obsolete. Contact the purchasing agent to express the problem so that the sheet can be corrected and can be fixed. I mean, we're human, and these sheets are usually made in collaboration with the department who owns the contract. But maybe a formula doesn't add up quite right. So we want to fix it and get the same information out to everybody at the same time. So the Excel price sheet is usually where all of the pricing, all of the very specifics are contained within the Excel price sheet. I've had a situation one time where someone pointed out, like literally moments, if you will, before the bid was open, that there was formulas not adding up quite right. So I had to kind of halt the whole process, kind of like, hey, listen, we need to delay it because everyone should have the same spreadsheet and it should be adding up correctly. So the term of all bids is going to be different depending on the specific bid and the specific need. In this case, it was a 3-year contract, but this could say 1 year, it could say 2 years, 5 years, whatever the term is, it'll be defined right here within the contract. Now, the very next clause talks about renewals, and so as it says here, the bids aren't considered for shorter period of time. If let's just say that you see this and you say, gosh, 3 years, I can't do a 3-year contract, but I can do a 2-year contract. Make that a question, write to the purchasing agent saying, could a 2-year contract term be considered? And here's the reasoning why. That'll become a question. And maybe the answer might be, yes, we're going to change it from a 3-year to a 2-year. That could be a possible answer. In which case the purchasing agent would send out the addendum, send out the updated documents. And the contract renewal, as it mentions here, that if Procurement and Warehousing Services is considering a renewal, and by Procurement and Warehousing Services, we work in collaboration with the department who owns the contract. And so if they communicate, the department who owns the contract communicates to procurement that, yes, we want to renew the contract, then we then initiate the process. As it mentions here, we send out a letter saying we're interested in renewing the contract. You, the vendor, are you an agreement. It talks about pricing. It's got a couple questions. You fill it out. You return it then to the purchasing agent within the window it says, and then that document then is sent to the board for their approval. As it mentions right here, that procurement and warehousing services will send the letter of interest prior to the end, and then the awardee is notified when the recommendation has been acted on by the school board. So the school board actually is the one who actually decides if the renewal is going to happen or not. They can accept the recommendation to do the renewal, or they can deny it. It's their choice. As it says right here, that prices are firm through the initial 3 years of the contract. Sometimes on some bids, because the commodity prices might fluctuate real quickly, this might be different per bid. That's why you've got to look at the actual contract language. I actually am aware of a bid that's it's either happening now or going to be happening. I don't. But the commodity involved is very volatile right now, and when the vendors, including some manufacturers, saw the language that said that prices cannot increase for 3 years, they basically wrote to the purchasing agent and said, we can't lock the prices. That it's not realistic with supply and demand. Prices are going up too quick. So then now that purchasing agent can take the time to now address that situation. And I think in that case, they were actually changing the language because they're like, hey, listen, this is not realistic. Let me see, we have a question. Can you please, go ahead, Chelsea, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, if you can see it, go ahead. That's fine. You want me to read it?
No, it's okay. So can you please share more information regarding products or commodities than a service? Okay. Let's see. So in the case of this bid, and a little bit farther down, we express, because this is a catalog bid, so we're expressing exactly which brand commodities we're looking for. I actually had one recently where it was for a firewall. And I wonder if I could find that bid sheet quickly and show you. Can you see this window right here, Chelsea? Can you see this?
No, you may have to stop sharing this screen to share that one.
Okay. Let me see if I can find something. I wasn't really ready to answer this on the fly, but I can show you. Let me see. Oh. Here, let me. Okay. Let me stop sharing this. And let me start sharing this. Okay, can you?
We're not seeing it just yet.
Okay. Come on. There. How about now? Can you see that?
Yes. Can you make it a
Okay.
little bigger, please?
Sure.
Maybe the 200? Yeah, that works.
Okay. So this is just, I'm just kind of jumping ahead right here, just to kind of free flow a little bit. This is an example of a pricing bid summary sheet, and it's an Excel document. It's included with the bid. In this particular case, we were looking for these specific products. So this would be an example of a bid where, and I believe somewhere in the document it had specified that we're asking for these specific products because we have standardization already in place. And so that's why we're asking for this specific product. And so you as a bidder then would look and see, I'm looking for this specific model number, this specific, description should go along with it. I have, and this kind of quantity. So you would take this information, you would enter in your pricing right here. I have had a situation where somehow the SKU number, and usually this is a manufacturer part number, the SKU number was one thing. The description of it was a different thing. And so when I got bids back, I literally had like 4 vendors had a price of like $500. And then 3 vendors had a price of like $3,000. It was a huge delta, a huge difference. And when everything else was super close, so that didn't make sense. I reached out to the vendors who were offering it for the lower price point to say, are you sure you want to give me this for, you know, $500? Are you positive? And they wrote back and said, hey, you know, your model number, the manufacturer number is, you know, item X, but your description is item Y. So we went based on your description of item Y, not what you listed as the manufacturer part number, model X. Unfortunately, in a situation like that, it's something that I can't fix at that point. I've already opened up the bids. I can't correct it. It's frustrating when that happens. But you as a bidder, when you spot something like that in the Excel spreadsheet, make a question to the purchasing agent. Sometimes, like in the case of this particular bid, I believe this is equipment right here, the TSSC 5000 technology people would say this is F5 equipment. It's exactly what it says. It's the actual, if you pull this up in a reseller's price list, it's an actual box. Here is services, but we're saying it's going to have to be OEM. So the F5 consulting is what we're looking for right here. We're looking for 16. Does this help give a flavor for what we mean by products? I know sometimes there's janitorial bids, which will have like trash bags, or they have everything out there from food services stuff like silverware, plates, napkins. There's also like food bids that I've seen that are literally will spell out the type of apple, medium apple, and I'm not as familiar with all the language on that, but it'd have the same kind of sheet like this, but it'd be that different commodity spelled out. It'd be, you know, oranges and how many we think we're going to be using.
Pavan, does this work? Does this answer your question? Your mic is unmuted. Yes, okay, he says yes, thank you.
Okay.
Awesome, but we have another question from Carlene. Do you say more about minimum discount rates? Oh, she wants to know if you talk more about the minimum discount rates later.
Yes. Actually, down in here talks about the catalog item, the balance of line item, a couple of things like that about that'll be talked about in just a minute. So I think we were talking about the contract term and then the renewal, like we mentioned. If the bid doesn't have the renewal option, then we can't renew it. We literally have to go to bid again. The next section is really interesting, where it talks about how the bid will be awarded. And this is going to be different for every bid. So take the time to read this so you understand how it will be awarded. In the particular situation that this bid had, it said that the group would be awarded by group to all responsive and responsible bidders. It was to establish a pool of vendors, that we wanted the vendors to have a firm fixed hourly rate, and then a firm fixed minimum discount off the manufacturer's listed price, which is the catalog bid part, where it'd be, in the case of this bid on the Excel spreadsheet, there's a place where you could fill in based on the manufacturer, the minimum discount off list. And somewhere in here, right, it'll say you're able to give us a larger discount off list, or you know, deeper education discounts. But let's say you put 10%, then that would be for the term of the contract. the minimum you'd give us off list is 10%. The hourly rate would be the same. Like, let's say you said it'll be $60 an hour, then it's $60 an hour, or whatever the type of service. Sometimes it might be, you know, tree trimming. It might be this much per tree trimming job. Or I had one which was radio tower repair. And so it was a price sheet that said like, okay, it's going to be $3,000 for us to go up on the radio tower and do this kind of work. And maybe in that case, you might have an area with parts. So this is saying that it's firm and fixed. Now, the interesting thing is that there's different ways that the bids can be awarded. I actually have another sheet I want to share because I want to give some samples where you can see how this can vary.
While you're doing that, how many? We have a question from Hendricks that says, if there is an item on the list that you do not want to bid because you do not provide that product or service, can you skip it?
Okay, that's an excellent question. I need to open up this document to talk about different situations. Let's say the bid says it will be awarded in its entirety. So as the wording says right here, that unit prices should be stated on the bid summary sheet. And it says it's necessary for you to bid on every item in the bid in order to be considered. And so right here, it says failure to state a cost for any item will result in the disqualification of the entire bid. So that kind of answers the question, but it's dependent on how the bid will be awarded. So if it says it's an entirety and there's something on there that you can't supply, don't submit a bid with just that spot blanked out because you'll get rejected. What you would want to do is write to the purchasing agent and express whatever the situation is, like, can that item be broken out? Can they, however, it could be rectified. Like, let's just say, I think actually in a recent example, there was it was awarded by group, and I want to say it was like where they had trays and silverware and then the cups and the lids. And the purchasing agent got questions where the vendors were saying, hey, I can do the cutlery and I can do the trays, but I'm not really, the cups and lids, that's not really a source. So the purchasing agent was able to break up the group in a different way. So instead of saying, okay, now the group is this way, now it would be the vendor's choice which group they want to bid on. Okay, so let me scroll down just to by group, because that will answer the question better. When it says that it'll be awarded by group, you must bid on everything within the group. Now, if there's two groups, that doesn't mean you have to bid on both groups. It just means within that group, you've got to put a price for everything. Does that make sense?
Can you explain that a little bit more? That concept.
Sure. Okay. Well, let me maybe back up to talk about the different type of awards, because sometimes a bid is awarded by item, right? If it's awarded by item, then you put in a bid on the items that you want to bid on. If you don't bid on a specific item, then you're not considered for that award of that item, obviously. But you don't have to have something on every single item when it's awarded by item. But when it's awarded by group, as it says right here, it's necessary for a bidder to bid on every item in the particular group that you're submitting a bid for in order to be considered, because SBBC may order an individual component within the group, but more than that, it's impossible to do an equitable apples to apples comparison if you don't bid on everything within the group. So let's say a bid has a group of we'll go back to the cutlery example. It's got the tray, the silverware, the cups. So if you as a bidder bid on every single thing, but then someone else bids on just the cutlery, it's it's by group. We can't break it up after the fact. So once the bids are open, we can't change it. But you as a vendor, if you say, gosh, I can bid on the cutlery every day of my life, then you can write to the purchasing agent and she can split that out. And then now cutlery is a separate group. And then you would bid on that group, whatever happens to be in that group. Does that make sense? Does it help?
Got
that
it. Thank
help?
you.
Okay. We have another question from Makiba. Who do we contact to request previous bid information from public records?
Okay. So there's a couple of different ways that you can go about getting previous bid information. So the first thing is the all bids have to be approved by the school board, and they're approved by the school board through the board meetings, which are public meetings, and they're published on the agenda. So the school board agenda, it's on our website. If you go to the Broward County Public Schools, click on the board, then you'll go on to agenda and meetings, and you'll be able to search by the bid name, the bid ID number. But alternatively, you can also go through public records, right? And you can ask for anything from public records. Let me open up and I'll put into the chat the, let me find it. The way to handle. I'm going to copy this exact language. So actually, I get asked this frequently from all sorts of vendors where they want information, they want anything. They want, bids, they want anything. I kind of answer the same way every time, and that is you have to email. I just put it in the chat. It's recordrequests@browardschools.com. And you'll get a notification back acknowledging that you've asked for information, some sort of record, but be very specific what you're looking for. And then they will then work with the custodian of the document to provide you the information you're asking for. But you need to send an email request to the record request. So like, let's just say you're looking for the previous awardee's bid, and because you can't find it on the agenda, then you can ask the purchasing agent. Sometimes they might answer that as part of the bid, but generally the best thing to do is to send everyone to the public records request department, and then you would just express exactly what you're looking for. Are you looking for a copy of all the proposals received? Are you looking for a copy of the awarded contract? Just spell out. And sometimes people will put a couple things they're looking for. Maybe they're looking for a copy of the awarded contract. They're looking for a copy of the successful vendor's proposal, and that is part of the public record. Okay, so did you want to say something, Chelsea?
No, Makiba said thank you.
Okay. Okay, so now it can be confusing because it looks like these different ways of award look like the same thing, but they're actually not the same thing. This award, now it wouldn't say both because these actually conflict with each other. It would be one or the other. This one right here is saying that the bid will be awarded to the lowest priced vendor, basically. So whoever bid on that specific item by item. So you might end up with a bid with 10 items and 10 different awards. This next item right here, although it's being awarded by item, what's different is it's saying that this is specifying that it will be awarded to the 3 lowest responsible bidders. And then the bid continues on to express what that means. The lowest priced awardee for an item would be considered the primary vendor and should have received the largest volume or the largest bulk. And so that's where this is defining how sometimes it might be awarded to 2. It'll say within each different bid will say how it's being awarded. And you can see then here it talks about how do we procure goods from the second lowest bidder. Sometimes there's a project maybe where it's doing across the whole district, and you might need to engage all of the awarded vendors at the same time because maybe the work that we have just exceeds the capacity of one vendor. So that's where we will sometimes award it to primary and alternate. The difficult thing, if we only award to one vendor and they're unable to perform all the work, we don't really have any other choices during the term of the contract. So that's where having alternate vendor, having like primary and alternate gives the school board kind of additional avenues. So if more work comes up, or it's just like I was saying, maybe tree trimming, maybe it's after a storm and we need everything to be trimmed at the same time. And I don't think that's a very good example because that's usually more of an emergency situation. But tree trimming is probably could still be a good example because trees probably grow in seasonal situations. Like I know all of the neighborhood trees will get huge at the same time, and then they need to be trimmed. So that might exceed the capacity of one vendor. But when you've taken the item to the board saying, I'm going to have a primary and these alternates, and these are the specific vendors, then we will then engage the alternates to be able to meet the need of the district. So the same with the group. It will tell you. Oh, that's a typo right there. It's interesting. It will tell you, like this one would be awarded to one vendor, and this one is telling you it will be awarded to multiple vendors. And the example that we've been looking at, I'm going to open that one back up. It's saying it will be awarded to all responsible bidders. Can you see the ITB still, or again?
Yes, can.
Okay. I hope I'm not getting everyone dizzy navigating all over the place. In the case of this specific bid, I'm telling you it will be awarded to all responsible bidders to establish a pool of vendors. Now, let's see. Oh, it doesn't say that right there. In the case of this bid, there is part of the price list also had the specific standards, if you will. So the specific type of whiteboards that we're using. And the intention was to create material numbers. So whoever was the lowest price, the primary, would become the primary, and they'd become the vendor who that material number is associated with. And so that's kind of how all of the award would be generated. Okay. The pricing offered, it will express within the bid document. In this case, there's a spot on the bid where the firm fixed hourly rate would be listed for group 1, and then the minimum discount off list for group 2. And so in this case, remember, group 1 was the installation or the services, and then group 2 was the products. So I actually received a bunch of questions where vendors were very concerned, saying, I can't guarantee the same price on the items. And I was saying, I understand sometimes the price, especially in technology, it can fluctuate a little bit, but what can't fluctuate is that minimum percentage discount. So usually when a manufacturer raises the price of a commodity, then you as the vendor would still maybe like, let's say it started off at $1,000, but now the manufacturers raised your price to $1,200 and the list price is $1,700. They're still the same. Like, let's say you gave 10% discount, it's still a 10% discount off of that pricing. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay. And on the bid sheet, it'll specify for you where to put in those numbers, where to put those numbers in. Should we take a break for a moment, Chelsea?
We can get through this. Are you ready for a break? Or we can go through this section and then take a break and go straight into the SDOP portion of it.
Okay. Okay.
All
So
right.
yeah, we can keep going. I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking.
We can take 3 minutes if you need. That's fine.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind,
Okay.
a quick
Yeah, of
3
course.
minutes.
So folks, we will take a 3-minute break right here so we can maybe grab some water and just take a stretch, and we'll be back in 3 minutes. It is now 11:11, so we'll see you back here at 11:14. Thank you. Okay, we are back and ready to get started again.
Okay, all right. So, okay. Within this bid, this bid right here is called a catalog bid, and that would be where, and sometimes a catalog bid, really you have to look to the specification sheet or to the Excel spreadsheet, but sometimes it's just a discount off list. Sometimes it might have a list of specific products and then a discount off list, but inevitably it usually always has a discount off list and brands or the manufacturer list, if you will, that we're looking for. So in this case, what we're telling you is that, I guess a good example here is this catalog bid, it's for audiovisual equipment. And so there may be Epson. And so we would want you to tell us on the Excel price sheet what the discount off list would be that you're giving for Epson, but then also include for us a detailed product offering of all of the Epson that you're able to provide. The additional pricing and balance of line item is a section that's included for when there's a manufacturer not listed. And it's kind of down the road, if you will. Like, let's say that for the bid, we were, looking for Epson, but maybe as time goes on, they also want to expand it to Panasonic, but they weren't on the original bid, then we would then be able to still use the same bid with this balance of line item or additional pricing clause. The bid is always for new equipment only, not remanufactured, not rebuilt, not demonstration equipment. It's always new equipment only. As I mentioned, there's no written contract, so this becomes the contract between us. And if something is a problem during the life of the contract with something like this, we would then refer back to and say, no, remember, it has to be only new equipment, not rebuilt. Delivery and freight, it's standard for all of Broward's orders to be what we call FOB destination. And what that means is spelled out right here, that the awarded vendor retains the title and control of the goods, and they're responsible for dealing with the carrier if it's damaged in transit throughout the life of the contract. Sometimes I see after the fact vendors will change that to say FOB origin or something like that. Now, this is not talking about shipping costs. Although in this case, this bid somewhere else does talk about shipping, and it's saying that we want shipping costs included in the price of the product. But sometimes, like for appliances, they allow for a separate line for the shipping cost, right? So for example, appliances, although we're paying the shipping, you, the vendor, you're still responsible for it while it's in transit to us. Okay. In this particular case, we were saying that any substitutions have to be approved by the department who owns the contract. And any changes have to be approved by the department who owns the contract. So like, let's just say that the original contract called for an Epson, type 2 projector. I'm making that up because I don't have a great example off the top of my head, but the type 2 is no longer available. So then you would do the type 3, but you'd have to work with the owner of the contract to make sure it's compatible, it still works, it's all good before just moving forward with an order. I see this a lot of times with technology, where technology is evolving and the generations change. So this could also apply, though, if it's other types of commodities, like maybe office supplies, where maybe it's like a Post-it note. Then you'd work with the owner of the department to say, hey, listen, maybe packaging changed. You just, work with the department to provide an alternate or a substitute that would work. Okay. Through the bid document, when there's more than one group, you'll see things that apply to one specific group. So in this particular situation, 5.16, we're talking about installation, and we're saying this applies to group 1, right? So anything listed here doesn't apply to group 2, just group 1. Likewise, sometimes there'll be things not in scope. In this case, it's not in scope. If there's anything that is additional needed, it'll be included in the bid document. Permits is an example. So if there's a permit needed, or the building code, the as-built drawings, anything like that, it's specified within the bid document. Now, manufacturer certification is very common in bids, and read the document very carefully to understand what's being looked for. In this particular case, it says that the awardee shall supply certification from the manufacturer confirming that the awardee is authorized as an authorized dealer to sell and service the product. Sometimes the bid will say you have to submit this with the bid. As I mentioned, we're never looking to cut anyone out or limit anyone, but at the same time, we need to make sure that everybody who bids is considered responsive and responsible. And the responsible piece is where you're showing, hey, I have the correct certification. Include that with your bid is the best thing to do. Occasionally, if an oversight happens and you didn't include it, sometimes it'll say, like in this case, it says that within 72 hours of the request, you can supply it. Then when you get requested for additional information from your purchasing agent, supply it as quick as you can, right? Let's see, brand standardization, that's kind of standard, where sometimes there'll be something that we are buying because everything across the district is standardized on that. The bidding preference law is an interesting caveat for Florida. And it's basically a form that must be submitted with the bid. This is one of those things that we don't have. Actually, it says right here, failure to submit and execute the form with the bid will result in your bid being rejected. The form is, we're going to talk more about this in our next section next week. So don't be afraid. The bidding preference relates to when there's property being purchased. So, and the property is basically anything other than a service, like software licensing. It's actually property. So when there's software licensing being bought, this caveat right here applies. If it's just a plain service, you'll see that this does not apply. But if you have a question about it, always remember, like I said, ask the purchasing agent during the question and answer time to ask about that. Now, thankfully, you guys are local, and so the form is super simple for you to fill out. It's very easy. And the neat thing is that there is a local bidder's preference of 5%, which is really cool. I don't know if we'll probably go into more detail about that. I can show some examples of how that's handled when it's a product involved. There's actually, we'll probably talk about that more on the next session, because then you can see, you as the bidder, you can see, usually it's as part of the recommendation tabulation or the award recommendation document, where it'll show here's the price that was bid as far as the amount, and then here's a local bidder preference, here's what we did to it. Usually we decrease it off, but that doesn't mean it's a little bit strange how it works in the paper. And we'll get more into that probably the next time. But although the bidder's preference is 5%, we take that into account to figure out the award, but not for the actual amount that we will be paying. Okay, so I know that's a little confusing, but on paper, sometimes it'll look like we're deducting 5% from the price. That's just to figure out the award in light of the local bidder's preference, but we're still paying the original price. But the form is very important. It's not an optional form, it's required. I have rejected vendors before because they submit without the form filled out, and because you're local, this doesn't apply to you necessarily, but I had one vendor who was an out-of-state vendor who filled the form out, and I'm just telling you this so you know, we try to be as fair as possible, completely not partial to anything. I had the vendor fill the form out when they're not a local vendor. There's a section the attorney has to fill out on their part. Now, you as local vendors, you don't have to have an attorney fill out your form, don't worry. But out-of-state vendors do. They have to get an attorney involved, and the attorney has to fill out their section of the form. I had one vendor one time submit that form, and they signed it. And I'm like, well, you're not the attorney. Hold on. It says really clearly in the statute, an attorney. Okay, let's see. There's typically no minimum orders, and we don't want any orders to be batched. So you'll see that. Now, this could be one of those things that you have a problem with. You then write to the purchasing agent, and if they're able to change it, they will. They will. Price adjustments, we talked here and I mentioned earlier how the pricing would have to stay firm, especially the hourly prices. It would stay firm. It'd be just the $60 that you named, that's $60 through the first 3 years of the contract. And then after that, then let's say you're 3 years in and you're at the renewal spot, that's where you'd be able to convey, oh, the pricing has changed now, it's $65. Now here it's saying request for price adjustment shouldn't exceed more than 3%. And if that's a problem, like I mentioned, talk to your purchasing agent, send a question, frame it as a question. And as I mentioned, the discount is the amount that stays the same, the discount off list on products. Now, sometimes there's a list of standards, if you will, or I know with paper, we've had the specific types of paper, like maybe by the caseload, different weights. And when it's spelled out with the specific number, the specific type, that price is locked in for the 3 years. So those are situations where sometimes a vendor might write in and say, hey, pricing on paper is fluctuating. We can't lock it in for 3 years. We could probably lock it in for 6 months. Is that agreeable? And I have seen agents listen to it and then adjust accordingly if they have to. That's the nature of the beast. That's how business works. But convey that through the question and answer. Now, if there's any sort of unusual action happening, it'll be contained within this section. Like here in this case, we were going to be making kits, and we wanted to have like the wall mount, the projector, like a kit. So then you would get a PO where it's maybe one line item, and we'd need you to invoice us the same way. Look for something like that within the bid document. The lead statement is kind of boilerplate. In this particular case, there's a clause that allows additional vendors to be added to the pool during the term of the contract. Whenever you see this clause, if you've already been awarded, and it says right here, those vendors who've already been awarded under the ITB don't need to resubmit a bid. You're already in the pool. You're good. But maybe there's a bid out there that you're not awarded on right now. And you see that it's got this clause and you want to bid. You want to be added. You want to, hey, I want a shot. Message to the purchasing agent and say, when will this be released again to allow bidders to be added to the pool? Because then that's the time when you would submit your bid to be added to the pool. Okay. Warranty, again, when it's got 2 different groups, it'll tell you what applies for group 1 and group 2. And then we talk about supplier registration, the W-9. And now we are down to the supplier diversity and outreach program section. This section is actually owned by the Economic Development Diversity Compliance team.
Yes. So Winnie Cummings from our team will go ahead and if you have anything you'd like to share on this section first, and then Winnie will jump right into Winnie's presentation for the ESMWB certification and the program.
Definitely no. I had a vendor one time ask me, hey, how do you decide what this is going to be from asking the agent during a pre-bidders conference, which when that happens, if there's a pre-bidders conference, it's in the calendar. But as I told them, I'm like, this is fully out of my hands. It's fully in the SDOP department. Same with the insurance requirements, fully out of my hands. That's in the risk management department. The insurance requirements would be another section in the bid. So I'll go ahead and let Winnie go to talk because I'm all listening and enjoy. There's always so many intricate details in this section. So I'm sure I'm going to learn something along with all of you. Should I keep sharing, Chelsea, or do you want me to release to Winnie?
No, you can stop sharing at this time.
Okay.
And then, so Winnie will talk today more about certification, ESMWBE certification. And in our next class, Anne-Marie Richards and Anasta De La Hoz, who's our compliance team, they will go into a lot more details as it pertains to the forms that we fill out and the point system and so forth. So we're going to turn over to Winnie.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to, I realized before I share this screen, just if you can give is it a thumbs up? Yeah, if it is a thumbs up, if you are currently certified with Broward County Public Schools or have been in the past certified with Broward County Public Schools. I believe a few participants attended our previous session with Charles High a couple of weeks ago, and or with Ms. Shari Francis. So I'm thinking maybe a few of you may have been, okay, innovative software. I think, oh, Black Swan, yes. Good morning. I'm trying to.
So we have one hand up so far. Two. We have 2 people, 3 people.
Well, I'm looking at the names, and Black Swan, definitely. The Electrician, I believe Allison Horton.
Yeah, we have
So,
5 folks.
oh,
6.
okay. I finally scrolled to the top. Okay, I see. Yes. Okay. So for everyone else who isn't currently certified, this is just an overview of our certification process and the reasons and or benefits behind it. And from one of our previous classes, we always do a kind of a post session, a post conversation, and our leader, Robert, reminded me that, not all of our participants would be the ones to be certified. So I wanted to touch on that in the sense of maybe you would subcontract with a certified vendor, on a bid. So that is equally helpful to you in the bidding process, and so this a bit of information will just keep you or have you to be informed on what the process is and what the requirements are, so that if a bid it benefits you to have a subcontractor work with you or provide opportunity that they're certified is a win for everyone. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, so do you see it at the moment? Are you seeing the PowerPoint up?
Yes, we're
Okay.
seeing the ESMWBE slide.
Yes, okay,
Certification slide.
yes, great, okay. Like as I said, first of all, my name is Winnie Cummings, and I am a specialist with economic development and diversity compliance. And all right, hold on, just making sure it is moving. And my screen,
It's not moving.
it's not. I know. I see. Oh, okay,
Okay.
now it is. All right. I think the mouse doesn't like me today. Okay, so we just want to, again, as an overview, talk about the different types of certifications, the length in terms of the process, things that are definitely important and to look out for, and I'm not able to see you if you have a show of hands, but I know Miss Chelsea is going to, stop me or pause me so that we can take any questions if you have any during the time that I am going through the process of explaining certifications. Definitely any questions that you have, raise your hand or type them in the comments, and we'll, address them so that everybody can learn something, No question is a bad question whatsoever. Everything is always an opportunity to learn. Okay, so just by the types of certifications that Broward County Public Schools endorses or awards, either you are everyone when awarded is a small business enterprise, an SBE. The differentiation is whether you are a minority business enterprise, i.e. via ethnicity, or if you are a woman business enterprise. Again, for obvious reasons, being predominantly owned 51% by a woman, controlled and operated by a woman. So your certificate would look like if you were a woman business enterprise, an SWBE, if you were a minority business enterprise, an SMBE, and if you were a minority and woman business enterprise, SMWBE. So just the criteria, again, key overview, but still extremely what we, uh, that is basically our standard, non-negotiable criteria. You are registered with Broward County Public Schools and have a vendor number. You are a for-profit. You are independently owned and operated. You have to be in business more than 1 year. You have to be significant business presence. So therefore, you are operating within the Tri-County region, Palm Beach County, Broward County, Miami-Dade County. This is our Tri-County region for at least 1 year. And in terms of your gross sales receipts or the average number of employees that you have according to the US SBA size standards. Just to give you an idea in terms of your NASIC code, suppose that your NASIC code was a professional and management development training. And so the USI standard gross sales receipt is 12 million over the average of 2 years. Our requirement for you to be considered a small business is 6 million over the 2 years, not to exceed the 6 million. But we also have an emerging small business enterprise. And emerging would be the criteria of 25% of the USI standard, which would be 3 million. So in terms of your certification, when awarded, you could be an SBE, you could also be an ESBE for emerging small business enterprise. Now, when it comes to the average number of employees, again, it is not both, it is one or the other, because the size standard, I want to say 95% of it is either the gross sales receipt or the number of employees. So Curry is an express delivery services industry. It is not based upon gross sales receipt. It is based upon the number of employees. The standard size is 1,500. The USBA 50% of that, you cannot exceed 750 employees, or if it's emerging, 375 employees. And the last, but extremely important still, is that your company and the employees of your company, 50% of your employees must be domiciled within the Tri-County region. And again, the reason why it may seem as though for those of you that are already certified that we ask for so many documents, so much information, it is to verify and vet that this indeed is true, that you meet the criteria, because this is our agreement. This is how we award and how we standardize our, our expectations of our awarded vendors. In terms of our minority groups, African American, Asian Pacific American, Hispanic American, Native American, and gender, as a woman business enterprise would be a Caucasian women. Okay, moving forward, this is just a breakdown to be a little bit clearer about the emerging small business being 25% of the USBA size standard, 50% again for the small business enterprise, and whether it is a minority-owned business and or a woman-owned business, having to be 51% controlled and operated by either a minority or a woman. Okay. Moving forward, what we consider a reciprocal certification. So our partners are, Broward County, Miami-Dade County Public Schools, Miami-Dade County, School District of Palm Beach, and Palm Beach County. Their certificates we recognize and we will mirror what we already have, meaning when it comes to disadvantaged business enterprise that I believe Broward County holds as a certification, we do not recognize, we are not able to mirror that certification. We are able to mirror their small business enterprise. So just in case any of you who are not certified with us currently, but have a certificate with one of our partners, one of our sister agencies, so to speak. Take a look at what you have. Please review and note what we went through in terms of these types of certifications we have. If you have one of those, then yes, you would choose reciprocal certification when applying with us. Is it a quicker process? Yes, it is. The amount of documents we require are significantly less because we take the guesswork is taken out of the process for us because we trust our partners for having vetted you already. So the process itself, we have on our website, Chelsea, if you can put in the chat our browardschools.com // EDDC is our website for economic development and diversity compliance. And within the home page or the overview, you will notice that there is a certification section, and which would take you to our eProcure page, which is where you would begin the process to register and become certified if you so choose as a Broward County Public Schools vendor. The process is, on average 15 to 25 days, depending on if the communication that we have require documents, etc. That everything is uploaded in the application. If we're requiring anything else, if there are any questions within the process, as there may be, that we communicate with you all to get those answered and to try to complete it as smoothly as possible. Okay, so within eProcure, which is SAP Ariba, that is a system that is used in order to process the application. I would like to kind of paint the picture a little bit to have you understand that it is a 3-phase process within the application, meaning prior to getting to our section to certify, you are first registering as a vendor. And in that process with eProcure SAP Ariba, it's kind of like LinkedIn for companies. Your company name, basically who you are and what you do, that everyone can see. That's the first part. Then in selecting Broward County Public Schools in order to become a registered vendor with Broward County Public Schools, where we then, with our compliance and purchasing and warehouse department, they supply you with a vendor number and review the documents that they request to be uploaded. Once that approval process is completed, then there is the section where you are asked, do you want to become a certified vendor with Broward County Public Schools, and or do you want to pre-qualify with Broward County Public Schools? Then again, certifying with us would allow the queue to be moved along to our section where we can begin the review process. The system itself is based upon conditional statements, in the sense that if you answer no to a question, certain doors are closed and certain ones are open. So it is my point in saying that is this: be mindful when reading your questions in their entirety, making sure that you understand the question prior to answering, because if you kind of skim through it and miss the question or skim through it, for instance, I think that one of the questions are whether you are located in Broward, Palm Beach, or Miami-Dade. And if you happen to say no, it will automatically put you in a hold position under the guise that you do not meet significant business presence. And so you may think that, oh, this was easy. This was an easy process. It is just that by answering no when you should have been answering yes, if you are indeed located in our Tri-County region, the process stops. And we are not notified because the system answers for us and says, okay, well, they don't have significant business presence. So I emphasize greatly, please take your time to read through the questions. If you have any questions, our contact information is on our webpage with the certification. SDOB certification at browardschools.com is the email address, and we'll be able to answer any questions that you may have. You know, because really, as you're going through the process, you may be given or presented with questions that you're not familiar with. Absolutely run it by us so that we can, you know, clarify so that you can continue in the process. You know, the purpose really behind becoming certified, all the benefits, so to speak, to being certified is really and truly, you know, having access and to prime vendors and programs and services. Yes, we're doing this summer series. This is our first time really opening up opportunities to build upon what you know so that you only get better and better and are able to submit bids and just put your best foot forward with the knowledge that you may not have previously had in terms of payments as a vendor, as a vendor that you all are, hopefully, that you're registered as vendors of Broward County Public Schools. Your net pay is 30 days. But as a certified vendor, you get bumped up to a net pay of 7 days. You are first on the block for bid and solicitation notifications. You know, any technical assistance that we can provide. Our whole hope and sincere, you know, desire is for you to be your best in any way that we can help you to do business with us or help you prepare to do business in other entities is a win for the county or for our tri-counties to again increase via economic development. So that was, I'm not sure if there were any questions because Chelsea didn't stop me, but that really was a little bit of a snapshot of our certification. Now we are in the process of recording our like a little bit of a tutorial on the process because recertifying every 2 years, you forget certain things, signing on, et cetera, et cetera. But we also have a monthly certification class. If there are specific questions that you have or are in the process, our next class is August 17th. They're a little bit smaller, but it's an opportunity that when you're in the process and you have specific questions, we can dive right in, share your screen. Our last class was last week and ended up being a one-on-one, but you know, questions were answered directly and definitely cleared up a little bit of confusion, and the vendor was able to just complete the process. So again, we're just we're open to helping you develop so that you can become better and just have more avenues and opportunities available to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Winnie. We will take your questions at this time. Oh, I was able to answer a few of the questions that came in while you doing the presentation.
Okay.
So if we have any questions, if not, I will go ahead and turn it back to Harmony to finish up today. We have 10 minutes left in our time slot, so we want to be able to make the best of it. So Harmony, we're giving it right back to you.
Okay. All right. I think we only have one section left to talk about. So yeah. I want to resume sharing. Okay. So, oops. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, everybody. I just probably got everyone dizzy and sick with scrolling so fast. Oh goodness.
It's okay.
Okay. So this section is the insurance requirements. So this section is set by the school board's risk management department. And it includes lots of different parameters, but the thing I would want to point out to everybody is that the school board works with a company called EXIGIS, Exigis. Exigis RiskWorks is who collects the insurance certificates. And I'm actually in a situation right now where I find that the insurance certificates are collected at the beginning, and then as they expire, Exigis will email the vendors to notify, hey, your insurance certificate's expiring, please submit a new one. But I don't know if it's going to junk mail or what's going on. And then the certificate expires, and then we get a request to issue a purchase order, and we can't release it because the insurance certificate's expired. So that would be something that I would express to everybody. If you are an existing vendor, please look out for emails from Exigis. And then, so to circle back, while a lot of this is boilerplate, it also is updated every time by risk management. I see the most issue with this professional liabilities and error omissions. If for whatever reason it doesn't seem like it applies, please write that as a question. But I can tell you that if it's like floor plans are involved, then I usually do see this, or if it's some sort of software coding, it's included. If your service is, or if you're just providing a product, maybe you're just shipping it, then you won't see this on as a requirement. But the auto liability, they'll also hold everybody to where if you don't have a any company-owned cars, you would need to sign the affidavit. So I guess that would be the one thing, is that once you get through the hurdle of bidding and you're awarded a contract, just make sure your certificates and all of your insurance stays current so that we can just issue POs without any sort of interruption. Because all of this, it will stop POs. It's happening right now. Actually, I have several that are in limbo right now because they are expired. So I think that's everything I have. Does anyone have questions about the insurance or anything else?
Folks, we have a couple minutes. We can take your questions on anything that we've covered today. Your mics are unmuted, so you can unmute. No, no questions so far. Okay.